Hi everyone, it's Liam here from Rating the Races. So the final video of the day is about the handicappers from Ireland that caught my eye over in the UK at Cheltenham, where they could go next. And we'll start off with Corbett's Cross, who was obviously very impressive at Cheltenham, winning that long distance race. He's been given a handicap mark in Ireland of 157. I don't think that's enough to stop him running a massive race in the Irish National if they send him there. I think he's a Grade 1 horse. Corbett's Cross, I'm still convinced he would have won the Albert Bartlett if he didn't run out. And off the back of that, an Albert Bartlett winner, a grade 3 mile 6 winner at the Cheltenham Festival, you deserve that high mark of 157. I still think he would go very close in a race like the Irish National. If he'd run in the Brown Advisory, I think he would have gone very close. Granted, he might not have won. Factor Far won that, didn't he? Just trying to think of the difference. Yeah, Factor Far won it. That's why they split him up. But if Corbett's Cross had, say, finished second to Factor File and turned up here, he would have been along the same sort of lines as I Am Maximus, who did win the Irish National last year. I think Corbett's Cross is going to take all of the beating in the Irish National. Second horse that caught my eye was My Mate Mozzie, who's been given a mark of 149 in Ireland. That's about right, I think. Maybe a little bit lower than what he could have been, on the back of his 6th place in the Arkle. Now, that's an Arkle. I don't think he's a Grade 1 horse. I think he's a very good handicapper, but I don't think he's a Grade 1 horse. Got to remember, he's finished 3rd in the Galway Plate. No, he's finished 3rd in the Galway Hurdle, sorry. And those feature handicaps is kind of where I see My Mate Mozzie ending up. He could potentially end up in the Galway Plate, September. But in the meantime, you find a race you can win. And this race here at Fairyhouse over 2, it's a novice handicap over 2, 24 grand to win it. You can see he's been running over 2, so the trip will be fine. It's a novice handicap. Yeah, I think he would take all of the beating there. It is at, where did I say it's at Fairyhouse? Does he have any Fairyhouse form? He was 2nd back here. And he's also finished 2nd here. Let's have a look at those two efforts. 2nd and 2nd. Who was he beaten by? 2nd in a beginner's chase behind the Big Chap. Okay, that was probably disappointing. And 2nd behind Statuaire. Well, that's nothing wrong with that in a Grade 1. I don't think that's this effort was his true effort. I think they looked like they were going to get him handicapped, but ended up running him in the Grade 1 instead. Yeah, I think My Mate Mozzie could be very interesting if he turns up in this novice handicap chase the beginning of April at Fairyhouse. The next horse has actually been spoken about in a Twitter thread recently. It's the Goffer, who's still on the mark of 144. Someone suggested that he thinks he could be quiet for the Grand National. I'm not so sure. I don't think he actually stays the trip, and I don't think he stayed again at Cheltenham. I don't think he did last year when he went. He potentially went for home too early last year, but I don't think he's quite staying this trip. Interestingly, if you take out the flat charity race, that's all that was. You could ignore that. His last win actually came over 2.5. This Bulmer's Leopardstown handicap chase over 2 mile 5, worth 78 grand to the winner. I'm surprised they didn't turn up again. They obviously felt they had a Cheltenham horse. Let's go and win 52 grand with him instead then. Still a good prize. It's 2 mile 5 at Punchestown. I think the Goffer would take all of the beating there. He does have that Punchestown run under his belt where he won a charity race. That you can just ignore though. That's not true form or anything. It's just showing that the horse was fit. But yeah, I'd be really keen on him in this handicap chase at Punchestown. This is towards the end of April. But yeah, this is the trip he wants, in my opinion, not any further. The next horse is Saint Ouen, who I believed was handicapped by the British handicapper not to win the Grand Annual. What I mean by that is other horses, like Unexpected Party, dropped £8 in 3 runs. The handicapper, the British handicapper, dropped Saint Ouen by £1 after being disappointing in multiple races. The only race he's run in a handicap recently, he was 4th at Fairyhouse off his Irish mark, but the Irish handicappers dropped him £3 since then. And I don't think he was put in that race at Fairyhouse to win. I think he put in that race to try and demonstrate to the handicapper, the British handicapper, we're not as good as we were, we need to drop a few pounds. That didn't work. So next time I think they will really be trying. And there's this Pig's Back handicap chase, I don't know whether it's called that this year, over 2 mile at Punchestown. This is towards the end of April. They won it last year with Dino Bleu, who had obviously returned from Cheltenham after finishing second in the Grand Annual. St. War not quite as good. He didn't finish second. He was only 6th. But I think back off his Irish mark against Irish horses and off a lower Irish mark than what he'd been running off, I think St. War could run a really big race here at Punchestown. The next horse that caught my eye was Let's Be Clear About It, who the handicap has dropped £2 to 150, which actually means he's running off the same mark now in Ireland as when he was third in a handicap, when he went off the 5-4 favourite for a handicap of 2 mile 1. He doesn't want 2 mile 1. We actually said that day that he didn't want 2 mile 1. He wanted 2.5, potentially up to 3 mile. And we picked the correct horse to take him on with in Uncle Phil. But over 2.5, I would be very confident about Let's Be Clear About It, especially off that 150 mark. If that race in January had been off over 2.5 mile, I would have picked Let's Be Clear About It over Uncle Phil, because I think he's that good when he gets a handicap over this trip. Well, there is a race for him. This race at Punchestown at the end of the season is worth 52 grand to the winner. It's a novice, which he can run in, obviously. It's a novice handicap, and I think he would run a really big race here. Let's be clear about it. The only thing they could do is they could potentially try and win the Galway Plate with him, which is over 2 miles 6. Same owners? Same owners as Ashtree Meadow, who won it last year. That could be what they try with him. It's obviously worth significantly more money, more prize money. But I think Let's Be Clear About It. If he runs in either of these races, he would go very close. I'm hoping they go for this one first, and then next season target graded races rather than waiting for the Galway Plate. Couple more to go. Both of these came from the Martin Pipe. A Castle de Motte, not giving up on him. I think he could be dropped back in trip next time. He's now been dropped £4 in Ireland to 133, which is the same mark as what he would get in the UK, or what he was running off in the UK. Granted, if he came over to the UK, the handicapper might go, well, I don't think he's worth the 133 now. I think he's worth 130. But I'd like to see him at Punchestown, back over the minimum 2 mile trip, in a race that the owners had second last year with Tax for Max. Maybe they'll try and go one better with a Castle de Motte. He was ridiculously keen in the Martin Pipe, and I just feel that the step up in trip didn't suit. And maybe it's worth dropping him back to 2 mile in a decent handicap like this, where they probably go a bit quicker, and he can settle in mid-division and then start weaving his way through and picking off rivals. Got to remember, although he finished 8th in the in the Betfair Hurdle, it has worked out pretty well already. Let me just show you again. The the Betfair Hurdle was won by Iberica Lord, who ended up going for the Champion Hurdle. Lo de Sud finished second in the county. Go Dante won the Imperial Cup. Favois finished second in the county. No, he didn't. He finished second in the Imperial Cup and ran well in the county. You know, there's some good form there. And I think a Castle de Motte, just things didn't quite go to plan that day. He was very wide. He didn't seem to travel as well as he might do. But I think next time, back over that minimum trip at Punchestown, I think we could see a much better performance from a Castle de Motte. And finally, the last one I want to talk about is Waterford Whispers, who finished second in the Martin Pipe. In my opinion, if he'd settled, he would have won it comfortably. So I can understand why the Irish handicappers put him up £8 to 135. I think he'll end up in graded races, I really do. But in the meantime, you might as well win a race with him. And there's this Fitzwilliam Sports Handicap Hurdle. It's worth 52 grand to win it. Put him in at the deep end, against proper established handicappers, and I think you will run a really big race. It's interesting that Willie did run a couple of these last year. He ran both Horansu Dairy and Risk Bell, the unexposed types, in this race. They didn't quite do it for him. They finished 4th and 6th. But it wouldn't surprise me if Waterford Whispers was actually better than that, and a future graded horse, whereas these two definitely weren't at the time. I think Waterford Whispers could certainly go close in a Fitzwilliam Sports Handicap Hurdle, also at Punchestown. Of those, who would I be most keen on? The Goffer, if he goes for this 2 mile 5 race, really keen on him. And probably, let's be clear about it, if he goes up to 2 mile 5 and a handicap chase. But could they wait for the Galway Plate rather than tackling that race at Punchestown in just over a month's time?